This photograph is an example of Maslow's hierarchy of needs pyramid. It has 5 basic elements of it. It starts with the physiological needs and moves its way up to safety needs, love and belonging needs, the esteem needs, and the self-actualization needs. At the bottom, the physiological needs are like the basic needs of an individual. So, for example, they're air, food, drinking, shelter, clothing, warmth, and sleep. Maslow believed this was the most important piece of the pyramid. Moving on up is the safety needs. This is also almost another basic need of an individual, and it's like protection of the elements, gives you one security, order, and law and stability, and the freedom from fear. After that, once the physiological needs and safety needs are met, one can move into the love and belonging. And this includes family and friends, and even sexual partners. And it is where trust and acceptance is formed. And it also helps to motivate behavior from the interpersonal relationships. Moving on from there is the esteem portion of the pyramid. In this portion of the pyramid, this is where confidence is met and like self-esteem is established, where like one has an idea of who they are and what they believe of themselves. And it also has to do with like how other people look at them, so their reputation and like what they are as an individual. And finally, the top portion of the pyramid is the self-actualization needs. And this is when one realizes their like potential self, or they're like self-fulfilled in life, and this is often reached at the course of an end of a life when someone is getting old with age and is able to look back and see like who they are and where they came from and all that they have been through. In this photograph, in this photo album, we will also be discussing Erik Erikson's 8 stages of development. These will be a little more in depth described as the elbow moves through. In this photo album, in this PowerPoint, we will discuss how Maslow's hierarchy of life development occurs with Erik Erikson's life development stages. During this, you will notice Erikson believes the stages of life development occur at certain ages of life, while Maslow believes that they occur once each level of the pyramid is fulfilled. Throughout, we will also discuss some real-life experiences of how each life developmental stage works. In these pictures here is myself at the age of 6 months and then at the age of 1 year, during which I am being placed in several of Maslow's stages. To begin, I have reached the first portion of Maslow's pyramid, known as the physiological needs. I have fulfilled these portions of the pyramid because I have a home, I have food, I have air, and all the basic needs to being a human being and living an optimal life. I am also experiencing the next portion of the pyramid known as safety because I am being provided safety from my mother and my family. And finally, I am in the love and belongings portion of Maslow's pyramid because I have a very big family, all of which love me and would do anything for me to protect me. However, along with that, I am also in Erik Erikson's first stage of development known as trust versus mistrust. During this stage, children, or more so infants, are not sure about the world that that's around them. So to figure out how they feel about that, they look to their mothers and their guardians for safety and comfort and anything that will provide them stability. If the child is able to have stability and care and that is consistent, they will develop that trust with their family and with the rest of their surroundings. However, if not, they will feel scared and they will develop that mistrust. I had a rough bout during this stage because my mom and dad were going through a divorce, so I had this fear that nothing was stable since my dad was coming and going. So I would say that I was in the mistrust stage because my parents failed at developing the trust portion of the um, Moving on, in these pictures, I am at the age between 1 year and 3 years old. This is during a time with Erik Erikson describes as autonomy versus shame and doubt. This is when a child is learning to explore their environment and learn a little bit more about their independence by walking away from their parents and picking which toys they want to play, and also making choices about what they like to wear and eat. This is a critical period for children to learn about their environment and which is going to be the best for them. This is important because children during this time are either going to be encouraged or criticized, which is crucial to influencing their self-esteem, which leads into Maslow's stages. So in several of these periods of Erik Erikson stages of development, one will keep the physiological needs and safety needs occurring. Well, for me, that was the case. I have always had my basic needs met. But I've also, during this stage, it's very prominent that love and belonging is in place because my parents were very pushing towards that I can do whatever I set my mind to, and also esteem needs because I am able to see that I can do whatever I set my mind to, and I did form a reputation for being smart and being good at these things. This also is autonomy versus shame and doubt is also important because if the child is criticized or overly controlled, they will begin to feel inadequate in their abilities and may become overly dependent on others and lack their self-esteem. So making sure the child does have good self-esteem is very important, which my parents were very good at doing for me. Moving on, the third stage of Erik Erikson's stages of development is initiative versus guilt. Pictured here is myself in kindergarten, which is during the time Erik Erikson believes this stage occurs, this is a time in which children are learning to have, like, they're in school and they're learning to play and interact with others and growing their imagination. So this is also a time in which children are asking a lot of questions to learn and expand their knowledge. They also make things up, and they are taking the time to um, become better thinkers. During this stage, if the parents treat the children as if their questions about life or about anything are um, embarrassing or um, like a nuisance to their lives, the child will start to feel guilty for being a bother. And too much of that can cause a child to not want to interact with others and not know how to have any self control or a good conscience. However, um, if a parent is able to not make their child feel like they are a bother for asking so many questions and just answers them to the best of their ability, the child is able to expand and be more creative. In this stage, love and belonging and esteem needs are met because a child has to feel like they are loved and like they belong, and the esteem needs are met because the child is feeling like they are important, like they do matter to what they are asking, and they're not bothering their parents. My mom was very good about always asking my questions. My name is Gabrielle, but I do go by Gabby, so I did talk a lot and I did ask a lot of questions because I was curious about a lot of things. So instead of making me feel like I was wrong for asking or it was bad that I asked, my mom always answered the questions I had or anything to the best of her abilities, even if it wasn't always a correct answer or the right answer. She still gave me an answer that made me feel like I had learned something or like I was just fine asking it. Third stage Moving on to the fourth stage of Erik Erikson's stages of development is industry versus inferiority. Pictured here is me during a time of my adolescence. I was a little younger in the first picture and a little bit older in the second picture. These were a time in which I was in late elementary, early middle school, or late middle school, which is when Erikson believes a individual is in these stages. During the stage of industry versus inferiority is when a child is very big in their peer groups and very close with their teachers because their peers are very influential of who they are and their self-esteem. They are constantly seeking approval from others and making sure they are competent and valued by others so that they can earn pride and like a sensibility. If the child is being encouraged, then they are able to feel like they are being industrious or incompetent, and they're able to feel confident in their abilities and their ability to set goals and to achieve them. However, if they are put down about them, then they will feel like they are inferior to others and in themselves. Some failures may be necessary though so that they can develop. However, too many will be a big setback. Maslow's works into this portion of the stage because of self-esteem. There are several other portions of Maslow's pyramid that fit here that like are basic needs. However, esteem is a really big one considering it is looking at one's reputation and who they are and what they've become and all that. During this stage was a big portion of my life. I was playing 3 sports in middle school and I was in honors classes and I worked really hard and I was in 4-H and I've always had very supportive parents. My mom has always pushed me to be the best, and although sometimes I felt like I was being pushed too hard, she definitely taught me that any goal I set I can reach. However, I did have a couple setbacks, but I've been always able to get back up on my feet, and my parents were very big help for that. So I would say that I was very industrious in my aspects of my childhood. fifth stage to Erik Erikson's stages of development is identity versus role confusion. This is kind of where I am right now, being that I am 19 years old. This is a time when an individual is transitioning from adolescence to adulthood, so it occurs between the ages to 12 to 18. And this is when a person has to go through and figure out, re-examine who they are and what their beliefs and goals are. Um, this is a major stage of development because it goes into their adulthood, and this is also it's also for their like sexual and occupational identity. If one fails at doing so, this is when they will go through role confusion. They won't really know who they are, and they won't be sure about their place in society or what their goals are to go to next. During this stage, several of Maslow's um, portions of the pyramid occur, such as the physiological needs. You re-go through all those if you're switching into a new house or home or going to college, and your safety needs, because you have to re-examine your life to put yourself into the safety needs and who you are and how you'll protect yourself and how others will protect you. Moving up from there is also your love and belonging needs. One will establish their sense of love and belonging from their family, being that they are at a point where they are becoming adults and moving on and moving out. And esteem is especially prominent in this portion of the uh, stages, because one will have to see where, like, who they are, and their reputation be re-examined because they are being changed from an adolescent point to an adult point. For this, for me right now, I currently feel like I have a good sense of my identity. However, there are times where I don't know where I belong because I'm only a college sophomore. So I feel like sometimes I am still a child, but I'm also going towards adulthood, and I have to make choices for myself, and I'm just not always sure if they're the right ones for me. But I feel like I balance between the two, and I will, as always, figure it out. Erikson's sixth stage of his developmental stages is intimacy versus isolation. Pictured here is my mother and her partner. My mom is on the bottom in the white, because I have yet to reach the age in which one Erikson believes is more focused towards this. I can't say I am 100% in this stage, so I am going to focus it more on my mom and her partner. Um, During this stage is a period in which one is learning to form intimate and loving relationships with other people that are more than family or someone other than a family member. This is successful when one learns to have love and commitment and safety with another person and is able to have care. Isolation occurs when someone has a fear of commitment in relationships, which can lead them to isolation or even depression. So success in this stage would be obviously love. I have sort of began to move into this stage because I have been with my boyfriend for 3 years, so I hope to have intimacy in my future, instead of isolation, because I used to have this fear of isolation and being alone, but I also did fear commitment. So I've been able to pull myself out of the path of isolation and move into intimacy. Maslow, um, his stage works into the love and belonging, because this is a time in which one does feel love and like they do belong to like this other person. Not so much belong, but they do really love, and that's very prominent. And safety is also even factored into this, because your partner should make you feel safe. So feeling safe and having the love and belonging stage, along with the esteem stage of Maslow, is important, because the esteem stage is prominent in this because it is when an individual is feeling good about themselves or good about their relationships, they tend to have a higher. The seventh stage of Erikson's stages of development is generativity versus stagnation. I've definitely not reached this portion of my life because I am only 19, so I did put another picture of my mom. She is 40 years old. So during this time of generativity versus stagnation is when an individual is giving back to society. So this is through potentially raising children and providing like more individuals, like successful individuals, or being a volunteer for their community, or some sort of like positive thing that benefits more than just themselves. And when one is feeling generativity, they develop like a sense of being a part of a bigger picture, which leads to feeling accomplished or useful. While as if someone were to not do these things, they'd fall into feeling stagnant and where they feel like they are feeling unproductive and disconnected or even uninvolved with their society. My mom, I feel like, is a very generative person because she did have me and my sister. And along with that, she also is a medical assistant and a cast tech. So she does give back to her community through her work. However, I could understand how one could become stagnant if they were to keep themselves isolated from their community and uninvolved. Maslow works into this because if one because one who is generative by having children begins to provide his stages of development. So they begin to give their children physiological needs, the basic needs of safety, and then the love and belonging and the esteem needs. So that's how that works together. The seventh stage. The final stage of the final stage of Erik Erikson's stages of development is ego identity versus despair. Pictured here is me and my grandma. My grandma is 71 years old, I do believe. 70, possibly. Not 100% on that. This is a time in which people become senior citizens and they look back on their accomplishments and look back to see if they led like a successful life. Those who feel like they were successful develop ego identity and they feel good about themselves and about the life they lived. However, if people look back at their lives and start to regret things or feel guilt about their past or like they didn't accomplish something or some of their goals, they often will develop despair. However, Erickson did believe that there is a balance between the two, that they do occur, but like they can be a healthy balance at times if they are balanced correctly. My grandma definitely does go between both of them. I see it because I live with her, so I'm able to see like the ego identity and the despair that come from it. I also believe that as I age, I will go through both of these instead of getting stuck in one. Maslow factors into this because you finally reach the self-actualization needs at this point in life, or possibly that's the ultimate goal, is to reach this portion. So that's when they look back and they think that they have done good and they feel like they've become a good portion of society, a good product of society, and given back to